this, yeah, I mean, I guess, just don't know really what to say. This video was kind of a last minute video. Again, may need to pause, split up into two parts depending on what happens. But it is what it is, right? But again, this one is, yeah, it's because it's definitely a more recent thought, kind of, I guess, like last minute, and it's in response to one of the animes I just started watching, which I'll mention later on. But again, it's something to where this is a topic I wanted to cover, which again, it's not related to a specific one, which is how my past videos have been with Anohara and then B-Stars, right? But it's like, this one's more so general. Like there are two others I can cover, like I mentioned, right? It's the Vine Girl one and the big ass four-eyed girl one, right? That's how I remember them. And I will cover those at some point, right? But I just want to make this video and again have this be something to where it's like, because this is just something that's been kind of like how I wanted to make the Omori characters video, right? This is kind of a video I wanted to make on this for some time now. It's been like an itch I've been wanting to scratch, right? So it's something I want to talk about. So that's kind of getting into it, right? Again, you can see because of the title, right? Naive, idealistic anime protagonist, right? I feel like that in itself carries a negative connotation, unlike some of my other videos, which may seem like it, but I don't mean it. So like the B-Stars and the Anohara one didn't even really mean to carry a negative connotation, because I talk about both of them in kind of, even the B-Stars one's kind of like in a positive light, just bringing up the negatives to shine that positive light even more, because that's just, I feel like that's like, put some emphasis on that, and that's also more realistic, right? That's, showing it as how it is. But again, something to where this is something to where, again, right, this one definitely carries a negative connotation. It's something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I will, like, try to spin it, but again, it's just, this is something I wanted to talk about. So again, but it also does carry that negative connotation, because again, naive, idealistic anime protagonist, right? I think if it's not established, I guess I hate, I guess what's it called? Well, don't want to say hate, because that's more personal, but in some of my other videos I talked about, and especially, I even talked about, what's it called? Well, I guess I didn't do, but I talked a lot about this in my DDLC videos about, like, I guess, idealism, and more so, again, like, idealistic, I guess, like idealism and then idealistic mindset, in regards to like Monica, and that stemming as a result from, again, like, I guess being placed on that pedestal, trying to maintain that perfectionist, like, I guess, like, image, like nature, like image of perfection, right? It focusing so much on yourself, again, right, leads to that, like, idealistic, and then, like, idealism in general, but also that idealistic sense of thinking as a result. So as opposed to just kind of how it is in reality. So I talk a lot about that, I'm not going to bring that up anymore. Again, that's mostly in DDLC, but this does apply to anime, so that's why I'm going to talk about it. And talk about in the form, again, what's applied to, and more so, naive, idealistic anime protagonists, because I feel like that's fairly self-explanatory. It's something to where, basically what I want to kind of get into is, there aren't that many anime tropes that bug me, right? Lots of them kind of I can let slide by, because it's like, okay, so long as the character's interesting, right? This is the one kind of exception. This is the trope that I hate, right? I dislike, and I will use those terms. Like, hate's a strong word, but, I apply in this sense, I agree with it, right? This is the one trope that I hate and dislike, because it's just, not only is it so overdone, but it's so boring, right? So again, naive, idealistic anime protagonists who are just good for the sake of being good. They're like one-dimensional. It's like one-dimensional evil, where you have like shitty antagonists who just do evil stuff because they're evil, right? They're bad, right? They're the antagonist, right? They're the villain. But instead, it's kind of the flip side for the protagonist, where it's like, again, something to where it's like, do good for the sake of good, because they're the protagonists and they do good and they're good, right? It's stuff to where I also think, because I'm going to bring up an example that's, if you're watching, it's probably going to piss you off, but it's important to distinct, or like, to draw a line and distinguish between, like, I guess, like, nature of a character, the mindset or mentality of a character, and kind of their motives in this naive idealism, as opposed to, like, let's say their actual character, like, backstory, like, stuff along those lines. Because I feel like the greatest example of this is Naruto, right? I would classify this naive and idealistic, right? Naive, idealistic anime protagonist who's doing good for the sake of doing good, right? Because he's a good person. He's the hero, right? He's the protagonist. He's good, right? Disregarding the whole like generational like heritage lineage thing going on there. He's just because that's what it is, right? And obviously the response is, oh, his life sucks. His backstory, right? His life sucks ass, because it does. His life does suck ass, right? He has a shitty backstory. But again, you need to distinguish between, again, like his backstory and like his character, like versus again his motives and his kind of nature, which is where that naive idealism works itself into place, right? Because something to where it's just boring, right? It's boring. Like, I don't know what else to say. It's not like interesting at all. I'll say something else controversial. I think Boruto is more interesting in motives than Naruto, right? Granted, I think his backstory isn't as good, mostly because the anime itself doesn't seem to be as well fleshed out. But I think his motive of not wanting to be like his dad and actually wanting to be his own person, as opposed to Naruto's, where it's just like, oh, I'll do good because I'm a good person, right? Just believe me, right? And then they ask him like, oh, how will you? It's like, oh, just believe me, right? Again, it's kind of funny. Like, it's actually pretty fucking hilarious, but that's boring. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, I think there are so many more characters in the show that are more interesting, but obviously we're talking strictly protagonists, because again, my motive for creating this was a new one I watched, which is definitely not I'm realizing it now, it's like not my demographic at all. It's like, what, Little Witch Academia? And the protagonist is like that, but like on crack and steroids, where it's like, they're so good in like trying to do so much good that they actually like actively endanger themselves and ours. It's hilarious. But again, something where like this is something I want to make, because it's not interesting. Like, it's boring. Like, having a protagonist like that is boring. Like, okay, you can give them all this backstory, all this fluff like they do with Naruto. Like, oh, he has this fox inside him. Oh, that's cool. He has this shitty backstory, right? Oh, this, you feel sad for him. But that doesn't cover up the fact that when it comes to his motives, it's just this naive, idealistic sense of good. Like, I'm not even trying to sound like edgy. It's just not boring. It is boring. It's just not interesting. Like, that's what it comes down to. Like, again, like, so many other characters like are much more interesting. Obviously not protagonists. Like, I think Sasuke is more interesting. His motives and kind of the evolution throughout, right? Because obviously, it's different, as time passes. I think even like the villains, like, go like flip to the villains, I guess I'll start naming them off, spoilers, right? But like Itachi, I think his is more interesting, even though I think he's an overrated character. Nagato, I think his are interesting, right? His in pain, right? Even Obito is my personal favorite. Again, I think his are interesting, right? If you can get back the whole like get over the whole like Simp of Six Paths thing, right? That's actually kind of funny, better than just, oh, he sucks ass because he lost to Kakashi. But anyway, and then like even Madara too, right? Kaguya, like, Boruto actually ended up expanding on them, which was interesting. But anyway, I'm getting off topic here. But the point being, like, it's just boring. It's bland. Like, naive, idealistic, generic anime protagonist. Like, oh, I'm good, and I do good because I am a good person, right? Do good for the sake of good, right? And it's like, oh, how do you do it, right? Or how do you plan this? It's like, oh, just believe me, I'll do it, right? Because of my spirit, I'm different, right? It's like, because you can point out, pick and choose so many like that. That's just boring and bland. Like, it's like, you can give, and again, like I mentioned, and funny enough, I'm maybe wrapping this up soon, but like, as I mentioned, like, you can fluff it up, give him as much backstory as you want. Oh, he has this fox inside him. Oh, he has a sad life, right? His life sucks ass. Again, which, okay, but it doesn't change that, right? And that's kind of the issue there. And obviously I don't want to rag on Naruto, again, I enjoy it, right? It's just, because that's probably just the best example of that you can apply to so many other animes. Again, it's just, because it seems to be just like, I guess, I don't want to say, because here's the thing, definitely, there were shows, and I think this was an issue in the past, where they'd have the same thing, but for villains, where you have just people who are evil because they're evil, like, being evil for the sake of evil. I think it's almost, like, I think that was a problem back then, not even necessarily for anime, but more so just film in general, like film, I guess, like, shows, like, stuff like that, media. I think that was an issue back then, but it almost seems to have kind of flipped. Because, like, it seems to where we have a lot more well-developed and, like, thought-out antagonists now. But the protagonist is kind of, like, devolved into just being this, like, oh, I'm a good person, right? Like, kind of deal. And, again, it's just something where that's bland. Like, that's boring, right? Like, I don't know what else to say. It just is. And, again, it's something to where it's, like, in terms of that, again, it's just I really don't know, because it does seem like it's flipped in a sense, but it's something to where, like, I think what's infinitely more interesting is, as opposed to just make them like a good person, if anything, give them an actual fucking motive that just happens to cross paths with, you know, the villain, right, or the antagonist, and then have that be something to where maybe they then learn on to be like a good person, as opposed to just being like, oh, I do this because I'm a good person, right? It's like, come on, like, that's just not interesting. Like, I don't know what to say. That's just, it is how it is. So, but I guess it's only been 10 minutes and I may end it here. Is there anything else I really need to talk about? No, I mean, I will eventually make those 2 anime videos, right? And make the videos on those ones. Maybe I even do them now. I will eventually do that. Don't have any more Mori videos planned for the immediate, in the meantime, or the immediate future. Yeah, but I mean, beyond that, and then again, you know, I made, what's it called? Yeah, so, but beyond that, I think that's it for pretty much this one. Not much real else I want to say or talk about or do with this, so I guess, yeah, I'll just end it here and then move on to this next one. This is, again, it's more of a short one because that's just something I wanted to talk about in relation to this new anime I'm watching. But obviously, you know, before I make a video on that, I'm going to finish it. And, you know, I still need to make videos on the old one. So that's what I'm going to do. And anyway, that's, what's it called? You know, that's what I'm going to end it off on. So anyway, so, yep, that's it for this one. See you in the next one.